Richard Spencer, who was profiled extensively in national media as the dapper Nazi, I believe one headline read. He went viral after getting punched in the face at Trump's inauguration. There's a new audio clip that has surfaced from what might seem at first a surprising source. Milo Yiannopoulos on YouTube published a audio clip claiming that it was Richard Spencer using all kinds of anti-Semitic and racial slurs after learning of what happened at Unite the Right in Charlottesville. To discuss that and more, I have Sam Seder. Sam, what's up, man?
Same old, same old. How are you?
I'm all right. Have you heard this audio yourself?
I have, yes.
And what did you make of this?
Well, the first thing I thought was, and as I do with stuff like this, that always seems just too perfect in some way, that this was I don't want to swear, but a rat F, I guess. Milo posted it on his YouTube channel. It doesn't prove that it's real, but it's definitely, at the very least, gives us an insight into what's going on with Milo Yiannopoulos. But I suspect it is real, and it's not shocking in terms of who Richard Spencer is, but it is shocking just to hear, because it's shocking to hear people talk like that, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, part of what I've done at Right Wing Watch while I've been working there is, you can put your trust in me and listen to me. And I hope you do when I say this person is a racist, they're terrible, screw this person. Or, we can just show you them saying this stuff that is sort of undeniably racist. And all I could think about when I was listening to this audio is, this sort of sense from institutional press and media that, people were just being hysterical and we should debate these people. And that's just all that was coming to mind hearing this clip and just being I wonder if there's going to be any sort of self-reflection happening here.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the
answer.
I don't know if that was a question, but if you want an answer for that, it is no. I mean, look, it's a commercial endeavor, and people people can't help but talk about these people, and it really, I think at the very least there should be, just if you're going to put these people on, it should be done in a far more critical context. I think you can sort of examine racism and racists in different ways, and I think that's fine. But I think you also, need to make it clear that there's not that the new, maybe you can argue about, what leads to these type of beliefs, but the nuance in the belief and what they're willing to do for it, I think is a dangerous pursuit. Let's put it that way.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And sort of, I want to talk a little bit about what prompted the release of this. If people haven't been paying attention to the far right, there's been sort of a series of Turning Point USA events where the self-declared Groypers are going up. It's sort of the remnants of that edgy alt-right type thing that happened right around election time before Charlottesville happened and the brand was ruined, as they would say. And leading this charge is people like Nicholas Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos and a couple other people from the MAGA universe. I'm getting the sense from what I'm seeing that there is kind of this push to rehab some of these people and get that kind of flavor of Trump support back into a more mainstream place. Have you been seeing the same thing?
I mean, I don't, spend as much time as you do looking at it, but I think, look, it's pretty clear, that people, And it's hard to know, like, if this is an ideological project or if this is a more of just a career rehabilitation project. But I can tell you that over the summer, I got requested to be on Gavin McInnes's show that I don't know if
I
he's
remember
still,
you were telling me about this at Netroots.
yeah, I don't know if he's still doing it or not. I haven't really followed this, but he through a fake producer was in, and to be fair, I also was communicating with him through a fake producer. That's the way we do things around here, I guess. So his fake producer and my fake producer were negotiating about things. And he was prepared to offer me at least $5,000 to travel from Brooklyn to New York City to do his show where he would be the host. And there would be some right winger on, ostensibly, that he would moderate a debate between us. And there were two things that stuck out at me for that. Was one, I never get paid for an appearance like that, $5,000 in any circumstance, in any way, ever.
Right. If you go on TV, they usually don't pay you, and if
Well,
you're a
I'm
contributor,
paid
it's like not.
and I can assure you
ton.
that getting paid for a trip into New York City, and I'm actually on a per appearance basis. I get paid as a contributor at MSNBC. I'm one of the sort of the cheapies, and it's not it's a fraction of that, and it's a small fraction. It's not even like, let me put it this way. It's not a double-digit percentage of what I get paid. I'm not, I think my contract says I can't say how much it is, but people can do the math there. And so that's very suspicious to me. And then, it became apparent that really what he was trying to do was rehabilitate himself.
Yeah, it seemed like he was trying to purchase himself some credibility.
Indeed. And look, this is he's doing the show for members, but I think he wanted to basically purchase some credibility and also purchase some to rebrand as not a hard right wing activist, I guess, but more of like somebody who could moderate a debate between a lefty and a hard right activist. And
yeah, it makes me think of the height of Berkeley, where it's it's all about free speech and free exchange and disagreement, and completely just not even addressing the fact that he led a proto-fascist gang in the U.S. as it rose up and violently beat people.
Yeah, exactly. And then I noticed Mike Cernovich was on Dave Rubin over the summer as a documentary filmmaker. And, I guess if you make a documentary film, you can identify yourself as that, but that's not who Mike Cernovich is. It's not how he built his career. It's not what he was, he may be Mike Cernovich doing a documentary film, but I think there's some rebranding there going on, making it less tied into some type of right-wing activism. And Milo Yiannopoulos is a guy who is completely on the outs with this stuff, right? I mean, he's you would have a better sense of because I don't even follow him anymore. I don't follow his pursuits. And he's a guy who I think is trying to gain some distance between who, he was and was exposed as, and the further right, I guess, of people on his spectrum, or at least the more explicit, further to the right, at least rhetorically. And so I think this is I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know that the reasons have to be mutually exclusive. I need to rehabilitate my career. And of course, we want to be able to be weaponized for the 2020 election. And to do that, we need to sort of enter the mainstream more. I mean, people forget about this in the 2016 election. The vast majority of reporting that the New York Times did on Hillary Clinton's emails and et cetera, all the sort of supposed whiff of scandals around her. And I'm not saying there aren't whiffs of scandals, but I'm just saying that the basis of of the New York Times reporting came from a book and that was published by a supposed nonpartisan organization, like the Research Center. I can't remember what silly name they came up with. The book was Clinton Cash.
Yeah, Peter Schweizer.
Peter Schweizer. And who financed that so-called foundation? You know who it was, right? Steve Bannon.
I'm blanking right now. Oh, of course. Yeah.
And
yeah, that's why I'm starting to think one of my friends was trying to theorize that maybe like this push sort of against, TPUSA or these like institutional GOP type stuff, because there was like a whole wave of, for lack of a more specific term, I'll just call them pro-Trump influencers that sort of came into Washington with the Trump administration. And some of them got adopted into the mainstream. That Jack Posobiec guy, he's speaking at conferences and like getting Claremont Institute fellowships out here. And he was like the Pizzagate guy. He's the one who went to Comet Ping Pong and filmed himself inside it and then went on InfoWars and talked about like demon imagery all over the place.
Oh, he also was the one that Mike Cernovich hired to dig up a tweet on me in an attempt to get me fired from MSNBC.
Yeah. And so you have like this whole class of people that someone made some calculation somewhere and like sort of absorbed them into the mainstream GOP. And then you have sort of the rejects. And it seems to me like this is kind of like the rejects fighting with each other over who is going to, try to make the next attempt to get into the good graces. And I mean, even like Steve Bannon, like what's he up to now? He's making documentaries about like why China is terrible. And he's got some podcast he does out of his basement or something. I don't know. It seems weird to me, but I think as polls are dropping and Trump is sort of losing the popular opinion on the Ukraine call. Even Fox News, they put out a poll yesterday. 49% of the country, according to Fox News, favors impeaching Trump. So, I mean, like, I get the sense, and this is just speculation on my part, that they may be in a situation where they feel desperate enough to try to re-energize some of the parts that at one point when everything seemed to be going well were sort of snipped off and left to dry.
I mean, it's possible. It's hard to make these type of assessments and to, I think it's hard to impart an overarching strategy. I think there are like moments where it's like, it's possible. They copy each other a little bit. Like, oh, they're having some success with this right now. We're going to try that. Like, the TPUSA thing, it's the Charlie Kirk. I mean, the video that I've seen is Charlie Kirk is on stage with, I don't know who it is from the Turning Points USA, but he's a black guy who's gay, and he is verbally assaulted by these groypers. And it's a way, it seems to me, Charlie Kirk has got to be pretty happy with this on some level, because he is trying to, Turning Points USA has had a problem in the past with overt racism. They've had to jettison like a couple of college chapters, and people have quit because of the racism within the ranks of Turning Points USA. And he's trying to appeal to college students with a message that is really antithetical to the perspective younger people have these days. So this is a good way to make it look like, hey, we're moderate. We're not the revanchist folks that you think we are. Here I am on stage with a gay black guy, and look, we're being attacked by the far right. I mean, it is a way of repositioning, and I'm not suggesting that they planned it, but I'm also not suggesting that they were completely ignorant to the forces that were to bring about that type of conflict. So,
Yeah, and they certainly in the broader scheme, I mean, you're right. This is sort of a chance for them to say, oh, all that stuff that this like USS Liberty stuff that you guys are trying to bring up, that's a conspiracy theory. We disavow white nationalism. We disavow anti-Semitism. And that's just like a chance for them to keep trying to hammer that as they, are getting more donor money. And, at CPAC this year, they were like the organization that all the conservatives were trying to get in touch with. Trump loves Charlie Kirk and all that stuff. Speaking of TPUSA, have you seen this? I think it's called Politicon.
Yes.
I'm so happy that we can talk about this. Did you watch it?
I watched one episode. It is. I think we actually even covered it on the show. I had a lot of trouble saying the words Politicon. I had to take a small course to just learn to say it. It strikes me as something that could be, well, I don't know. I'm of two thoughts of this. I mean, it's hard because I'm old, right? And so, I see these things and it looks ridiculous to me. And my first reaction is probably what Charlie Kirk's funder's reaction is like, this could work. And I'm not convinced it couldn't. It may. I mean, it may create some type of following. I sometimes will have my daughter sit down and watch this stuff, and I got a buddy who's got a kid, a 16-year-old boy, and so I like to preview this stuff for them and see how they react it. And I haven't done that yet because I don't have a sense of how this stuff is received by the 14, 15, 16-year-olds it's supposed to.
Yeah, like TikTok. When I first heard of TikTok, I was like, what? This is stupid. It's like people just dance to music or whatever. And now like every single teenager in America has this app and is like rapidly active on it. So I feel like I'm losing my gauge on that. But, the conservatives have complained for years that like there's not like what they say is there's not like enough pop culture representation of conservative values or, however they want to spin it. And this kind of seems like they are just making it themselves. And, it's like sort of celebrity news. And, of course, at the end of the one that I watched, they were like, oh, this sports player was so cool because he wouldn't trash Trump. And it's, getting that little, partisan propaganda line in there, right, sort of digging at the end.
Yeah.
And it could be successful.
So much of this is Breitbartian. Andrew Breitbart was very convinced that politics is downstream from culture. And so, he didn't even have any opinions when it came to policy or anything like that. For him, it was very much like, I wasn't one of the cool kids in high school, and so I'm going to strike back. And how do we make, conservatism cool? Well, you start with making conservatives cool, and then just sort of like, filtering it in. And I think that's still much of the right still, I think, works under those auspices.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole sort of owning the libs thing, right? It's, humiliating your opposition, or at least attempting to.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But I'm thinking specifically about the idea of just culture being the important thing for conservatives to win first, and politics are downstream from that.
On to other trends sort of seen on the right. I never thought I'd see the day, but someone sent me a Joe Rogan clip the other day where Joe Rogan says, you know what this is already?
I can already tell what this is, yeah.
So I'll drop the audio in here in editing, but Joe Rogan is essentially like Classically liberal. Yeah. Okay. What's that mean? Republican?
Liberal, conservative. It casts such a wide net because.
And then people like to get sneaky and use, no, I'm a classic liberal.
Yeah, because
what is that? What is that?
Exactly.
You're a fucking Republican.
I didn't think Joe was ever going to wake up, man. I feel like that intellectual dark web sort of, what's the word? I guess sheer of like being sort of mystical or like forbidden knowledge is sort of melting away. And you've even got people like Joe Rogan that kind of have called the shticks up. You've got Dave Rubin just working for Glenn Beck now. I think that's part of it. I mean, I think I think that crew I can't remember his name now. Eric Weinstein, I think.
Yeah, Eric Weinstein is a little bit upset that Rubin. I know that he had a problem with Rubin doing the Turning Points USA. Didn't think it was a good idea for his career, because Rubin's been being paid by the Koch brothers and Turning Points for some time, and not full boat, but subsidizing what he's doing. And now that he's with the Blaze, I have a feeling that they may start to see him as more of a liability than something that's helpful to be associated with. And plus, Dave Rubin's not that sharp. And these guys really like to think of themselves as intellectuals. And I imagine when they go out to dinner and everybody's making some type of point and Dave tries to sort of like add to it, everybody just sort of looks at him and just takes a sip of their drink or something.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about Dave Rubin's stand-up career. So I just picture them talking about something. I don't know, maybe like diets or something. It's like, well, I'd hate to have my hamburger canceled, and just kind of silence around the table.
Right. We used to call those when I was younger, we used to call those CE, conversation enders. And I get the feeling that there's probably a lot of that Dave does, and it could be that Rogan couldn't help himself. There were some weird cuts. This was a clip with Kyle Kalinske, and there were some weird cuts in that interview, actually, that led me to believe that maybe they went, that Rogan may have gone even further, but didn't want to be too much of a jerk about it. I don't know. That's complete speculation on my part. But I wonder if Kyle has Kyle will release the tape, as they say. But I don't know. It'd be interesting. But
Yeah, I'm also curious to see if there will be any sort of public sort of confrontation over that at all.
No, there will not.
I don't imagine there would be. I just think back to like how disastrous the like Alex Jones confrontation with Rogan was, where eventually Joe was just like, oh fuck, if I say sorry, will you guys leave me alone? But
yeah. We'll see. I don't think so. Certainly Rubin's not up to that.
So before we start to wrap up here, I'm curious, is there anything you're seeing sort of bubbling up on the right, or just sort of general trends watching, this stuff go in and go out, that you think people should be aware of, or people should maybe take a closer look at?
I feel like they're at their lowest ebb, these folks, right? I mean, I think like deplatforming has hurt them in many respects. And we did a clip today on Ben Shapiro trying to make sense of the impeachment thing. And they're really, it's very hard for them to make this argument. And the premise of a lot of things that like a Dave Rubin says, or a Brandon Straka, and I don't know if it's insulting for Dave Rubin for me to bring up Brandon Straka. That's probably why I'm doing that. But there's this premise, and Rubin was on this kick for a while, like a year or two ago. Maybe it was, about a year ago. Like something's changing. there's a big movement afoot. A lot of people are leaving the Democratic Party, and people are walking away from the Democrats. Jexit.
The left is just too out of control and too extreme now.
Yeah, Lexit, Drexit, Jexit. I mean, they all came up with all these different sort of marketing tools. Mm-hmm. And there's not only no indication of that, but we're coming off of 2018 election was record breaking in terms of how many Democrats came out to vote. Such an unprecedented number that it's hard to understand. At one point you start to sort of say, how long can I say this is happening when all of the data coming in suggests it's absolutely not happening? And I think after a while that gets a little bit tiring. I mean, at some level, you hammer a narrative as much as you can for these people, and then it gets exhausting and it runs out of new material. And so I get the sense that they're dealing with that. The car has been chased and caught up with, and they're eating more and more of the car, and it's getting less and less tasty. And something else has to change, and it will. But for the time being, I think what I'm seeing on the right is sort of a slow desperation. And I would imagine that at one point, I don't know if it's when we get closer to the election or after the election or whatever, that's going to become more ugly.
Yeah. I have a looming fear that next summer is just going to be some of the dirtiest politics we've seen by a long shot.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, before I let you go, plug the show. Where can people listen to you broadcast?
They can watch the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sam Seder. They can watch it live at 12 noon every day. They can get it as a podcast or a YouTube later in the day. The podcast is available everywhere. You can also check out Ring of Fire Radio, which is at rofpod.com. You can sign up for that. And we just launched a new show that's like a 5-minute headline show every morning. That's in your inbox that is available to you at 8:30 in the morning Eastern time, called the AM Quickie, and it's just a way to get the headlines from a from a left-wing perspective every morning. So that's where I'm in all those places at one point or another.
All right, and Sam, because this is Shitpost, the final question: is there something on the internet that you're loving right now? Could be a post, a meme, some interaction that happened, a music video.
That's a toughie because I can go any different directions. I recently got blocked by Dave Rubin, so I don't have any of that stuff going on anymore, which is sad to me.
What are you going to do for content now on Twitter?
I'll tell you what. I mean, for the most part, it's a whole series of stuff. But my favorite thing in the past couple of weeks was a tweet by Politicon, because a year ago I was supposed to debate Steven Crowder at Politicon, and he backed out. And I had accidentally, there was a recording of that conversation from the Politicon people, and I dropped that this year, a couple of weeks ago, as part of a larger project I have with Steven Crowder. And, sometimes people get offended when you release, audio of a phone conversation. Instead, Politicon went at Cold Feet Crowder, as they called him, and challenged him to debate me at this year's Politicon. I didn't go, ultimately, because he said no, and I had another commitment, which I would have broken in a heartbeat, to debate him. So that tweet I found pretty exciting. And then there was like a sickly sentimental one where this kid is being videotaped with his dad, a little tiny kid, I don't know, maybe 2 years old, who's on a toilet, insisting that he did not poop, he only peed. And when the dad started laughing so hard, he was trying to hold back laughter, his tears started to water, and the kid all of a sudden got really concerned. He's like, "Daddy sad?" And the father had to explain that, "No, I'm very happy. It's funny. I'm trying to not laugh, but And it's honestly one of the cutest things I've ever seen. So that's basically my life. Getting involved with sort of reprehensible individuals and trying to make them feel bad, and then sickly sweet sentimental posts. That's it.
That sounds about right. We've been joined by Sam Seder. Sam, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll talk soon.
Jared, my pleasure. Thanks.
And before we head out, let's go to your calls. I think we've got one in the docket from Slater.
Hey, Jared, it's Slater. You've been saying on the podcast you've been going through some stuff. You've been having a very personal time. Just hoping everything's going okay with that. And I wanted to let all the shitpost listeners know that pandemonium's in effect, and voting for the worst pundit for the Awful Pundit tournament will begin after the qualifier round, which is up right now at Awful Pundits. Go check it out. And keep rocking on, Jared. Peace.
Thanks for the kind words, dude. And I encourage everyone to go vote in the qualifying rounds for the Awful Pundit tournament. It's always a lot of fun every year. It is something Slater puts on. It really good stuff. Thanks for listening to episode 76 of Shitpost for November 4th, 2019. If you enjoyed this show, please consider leaving us a good rating in iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast. It helps us a lot more than you know. This has been your host, Jared Holt. I'll see you next week, and never log off.